The first insult came over prime rib and candlelight. Paul lifted his glass and smirked at me across the table. "So, Richard," he said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear through the drywall if they listened hard enough. "What's it like to be retired and irrelevant?" A few polite laughs popped around the table. Emily's friends, a couple from Paul's office, my grandkids Liam and Sophie blinking between us like they'd been dropped into a courtroom. Emily's mouth tightened. She glanced at me, pleading without words. The fork in my hand went still over a ribeye cooling on my plate. I set it down. I met Paul's eyes and let him try to read me. "It feels," I said, "like this irrelevant old man won't be paying your bills anymore." The room went dead, the kind of silence where candle flames look guilty. Paul's grin twitched, then collapsed. Emily grabbed her water glass. Liam stopped chewing. Sophie's shoulders drew up like a little bird sensing weather. Before I tell you how that single sentence flipped our entire family upside down and how it forced the truth out where the whole town could see it, do me a favor. Hit subscribe, drop a comment with where you're listening from, and stick with me. This is one of those family drama stories that doesn't just sting. It changes you. Paul put his wine down carefully, like it might explode. "Come on, Richard. It was a joke." "No," I said. "It was a habit." It started 12 years ago, the week after Catherine's funeral. My wife was buried under a sky so blue it looked painted, and I made a promise over red clay and flowers. "I'll take care of Emily." I was 60 then, a tired architect who still believed in straight lines and strong foundations. Emily and Paul had just stretched for a house up on the ridge, 3 bedrooms and a killer view, and then the market bent them over. I stepped in with a temporary brace. Temporary braces, if you're not careful, become structural. Mortgage, insurance, a little help for the car when the transmission died, a month of private school tuition here and there, because Liam's teacher promised smaller classes would change everything. I told myself each check was a bridge. Then the bridges turned into a highway, long enough to see from space. Paul didn't always sneer. In the beginning he said, "Sir," a lot, shook my hand too hard, and showed up on Saturday mornings with a rake to "help with the yard, Mr. Hale." He was a hungry kid from Henderson who liked expensive watches and American whiskey. Then his sales numbers climbed. Then came the Range Rover, the golf membership, and that marbled kitchen island he told everyone he designed himself. "Retired and irrelevant," he repeated at the table, an actor trying to salvage a line. "You know I'm kidding." "Then you won't mind the punchline." I saw it then, the calculation behind his eyes. How many payments? How many cards on autopay? Could I be bluffing? Emily squeezed his arm. "She's my daughter, and when she's scared, she goes quiet. I've known that since she was 5 and broke a neighbor's window with a baseball and tried to disappear into the hydrangeas. Back then, I lifted her out of the bushes, brushed the leaves from her hair, and walked her across the lawn to apologize. She hid behind my leg until the words came out. At the table now, she hid behind Paul's arm. My granddaughter Sophie clutched her napkin. "Grandpa?" "It's okay," I said. "Eat your green beans." We finished dinner in a fog. People made small talk about weekend plans and HOA paint colors, because when something big breaks, human beings get very interested in little things. I kissed the kids, thanked Emily for the steak, and drove down the hill in my 8-year-old Tacoma. The truck smelled like coffee and sawdust from the tools I keep in back. Retirement, for me, never meant doing nothing. It meant fixing what was broken. It meant hiking on Saturdays, sketching houses I'd never build, waking up before sunrise because the mountains were one left turn away and the air tasted like pine. Cedar Ridge looked different that night. The grocery store parking lot glowed like a runway. Teenagers gunned Civics under the stoplight near the diner. Our development's stone entry sign, the one Paul bragged he'd negotiated into the HOA contract, cast a shadow over the manicured median. Somewhere, a dog barked. Somewhere a couple fought with their voices low but sharp. At home, I flipped the switch in my study. The brass lamp warmed the old oak desk I had hauled through 3 houses and 40 years. My files were where I'd left them, labeled, squared, satisfying. Architects live or die by what they can prove on paper. I slid out a drawer marked Mercer, Emily's married name, rubber bands, folders, a certain weight that lives in your hands when you've carried the same burden too long. 12 years of receipts thudded onto the desk like a second heart starting up. You set out to help your kid cross a stream. Then you look down and realize you're carrying them through a river. Outside, a line of tail lights climbed the ridge. Emily's house sat at the top like a promise. I'd helped them choose that lot. We stood out on the scraped dirt with a thermos between us, and she had said, "Mom would love this view." I said yes. I said yes too much. When I crawled into bed that night, Catherine looked at me from the photo on my dresser. She wore the smile I fell in love with on a job site in '83, paint on her jeans, a pencil behind her ear. "Make things strong," she used to say, "or don't make them at all." I stared at the ceiling a while and listened to the house settle. I could hear the future coming like thunder. I woke with a plan and black coffee strong enough to stand a spoon. No music, just the clicks of a man who knows exactly where he's going. Front Range Bank got the first call. It took 11 minutes to verify every number they'd asked me to read back for the last decade. And then, yes sir, the automatic mortgage payment has been canceled. The woman on the line was efficient and kind the way nurses are after midnight. Next came the insurance, utilities, the Range Rover lease, the private school's tuition auto-pay. A string of corporate voices walked me through the dismantling of a system I had built one bleeding month at a time. I wrote confirmation numbers in clean columns, my pencil making a steady, satisfying scratch. There's a lie people tell about generosity, that it's an endless spring, that if you loved someone once, you have to love them the same way forever, that if you can, you should. But I know about loads and spans, and when beams fail. I know when a wall starts to bow. The ledger is where you go when your feelings are louder than the facts. I opened a red folder labeled Tuition. Summit Ridge Academy letterhead grinned up at me. The eagle crest embossed. The slogan about forging leaders. 10 years of enrollment forms. Receipts. Field trip slips. $18,500 the first year for Liam. Up to $22,000 when Sophie joined. A few summers at enrichment camps, because Paul swore they would pay off in social capital. I totaled with the calm of a man counting rafters, $198,000. Blue for mortgage, $2,650 a month at the start. Refi to $2,180. A few missed months during COVID I picked up quietly. 12 years, $356,000. Green for cars, Toyota for Emily when the minivan died, $410 a month for 5 years. Range Rover for Paul, $940 a month on a lease that looked like a legal trap to me from the first signature. $88,000. Yellow for insurance and medical. Dental braces for Liam. The ER bill when Sophie broke her wrist on a trampoline. That weird gap year when Paul transitioned between brokerages and lost his benefits. $76,000. And a thick gray folder for miscellaneous that made me tired just to touch. A kitchen renovation that was an investment. Marble and brass. The photographs on Instagram captioned, "Hard work pays off." A Maui trip, a Colorado ski week, soccer travel. "Dad, the water heater exploded. Help!" $174,000. When the pencil stopped moving, the number tapped out a steady rhythm in my head. $892,000. I thought about Catherine, about the day we opened a checking account together and laughed at the free toaster they gave us. We were 23 and had $40 left after rent. We learned that love doesn't erase math. At 10:47, the first phone call landed. Emily. Dad? The bank called. Something's wrong with the mortgage auto draft. It's not wrong, I said. It's over. What? Her voice went high and small. You can't just... Paul's commissions settle next week and... Dad, we'll get hit with a late fee. You'll get hit with reality, I said, and hated the sound of my own voice because it was colder than I meant it to be, because I heard my father in it. She hung up. 5 minutes later, the Range Rover people called Paul. He called me with chest puffed back into his throat. This is a tantrum, he said. You don't get to hold us hostage because your pride is hurt. Paul, I said, I've been wrong 100 ways with you. I enabled you. I said yes when I should have said not yet. But I didn't do it because I needed your gratitude. I did it because I loved Emily and the kids, and because I believed you when you said temporary. 12 years is not temporary. If we lose the house, he snapped, that's on you. If you lose the house, I said, that's on math. That afternoon, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Summit Ridge. We require $4,400 by Friday. The power company. Your account ending in 7152 was declined. The insurance. Policy will lapse in 14 days. Normal life looks glamorous until you stop oiling the gears. The first day without autopay is brutal. The second is worse. At the hardware store that evening, Gus leaned on the counter and whistled when I told him. We've been friends since a snowstorm in '94 that dropped 3 feet in 2 days and snapped half the trees in town. You finally cut the hose, he said. You okay? I don't know, I said. We stood in the aisle between the lumber and the fasteners, 2 men in our 60s, hands scarred by work and time, talking quieter than usual because pain makes you polite. By the time I got home, Emily had left 3 voicemails in a row. Dad, Summit Ridge says, Dad, our checking is, Dad, please call me. I didn't call back. It wasn't punishment, it was clarity. I made soup. I watched the Rockies lose. I took a pen light to the basement and checked the water heater valves because it's easier to look at pipes than at tears. The next morning, the town got involved the way small towns always do. Mrs. Lopez from 2 doors down saw the UPS guy pin a notice to Emily's front door and texted me a photo. Everything okay up there? The HOA Facebook group hummed. A post about supporting families in transition picked up 40 likes. 2 people wrote long paragraphs about elder neglect without knowing anything at all. Liam called me that afternoon, 13, and trying to sound like a man. Grandpa, are we in trouble? Did you do something wrong? I asked. No. Then you're not in trouble, I said. Adults made choices. Adults will fix them. How's baseball practice? He sniffed. Okay, I guess. He wanted me to fix it. That's what I had trained him to expect. That's what had to change. Emily showed up at my house around 5, eyes red, mascara smudged like bruises. I applied at the coffee shop, she said, as soon as I opened the door. The one on Maple. They're hiring for mornings. I stepped aside. Come in. She hovered in the entryway like a kid again, refusing to take off her coat as if a quick escape would save her from humility. I don't understand how we got here, she said. One day we're fine, the next... We weren't fine, I said. We were dressed up. There's a difference. I never wanted you to spend this much, she said. I don't know. I thought you liked helping. I do, I said. That's the trouble. She cried. She said, sorry. She asked me to reconsider. I told her I'd always take the kids for soccer and dentist appointments and field trips. She nodded, and nodded like a buoy in a storm. She left with a paper towel because she refused to ask for a Kleenex. An hour later, Paul called from the curb in front of my house and laid on his horn like he was summoning the valet. I didn't go out. He texted a screenshot from Zillow and wrote, "Remember whose name's on this deed, Richard? We built this." I didn't answer. I went back to the ledger. That night, I slept hard for the first time in years. I dreamed Catherine and I were on Highway 285 with the windows down and the radio up, singing along to Tom Petty like we were young and stupid again, wind ripping our words into laughter. They came on a Sunday with their faces arranged for war. Paul's shoulders were squared under a blazer like armor. Emily's hands twined and untwined in her lap, in the passenger seat like she was knitting air. Liam and Sophie stayed home, which was good, because the kind of honesty we were about to pull across the table doesn't belong in a child's ears. Paul didn't knock. He swung the door wide like a man walking into a property he thinks he might buy. "Enough," he said. "You've made your point." I gestured to the dining table. I had laid out the folders like exhibits, blue, green, yellow, red, gray, because truth sometimes needs color coding. Paul sat, glanced at the stacks, and smirked. "Drama," he said. "Documentation," I said. "Pick a color." He grabbed blue. "Mortgage." He flipped a few pages, tossed it down. "We would have covered this if you hadn't undermined us in the early years," he said. "You created dependency." "You asked me to," I said evenly. "I said temporary." 12 years. His jaw worked. He picked up green, cars. He didn't read. He moved to yellow, then red. He was flipping past the amounts like they were footnotes, because that's how pride reads anything it doesn't like. I put my finger on the grand total. $892,000, I said. Not counting the weekends I babysat so you could host open houses, and the oil changes I paid for because you forgot your wallet, and the nights I lay awake wondering if I was loving you or weakening you. Emily stared at the number like it was a bullet hole. "Dad," she whispered. "Oh my God." "Ask him about Catherine," Paul snapped, a last-minute Hail Mary to switch the narrative. "Ask him about the promise he made at the funeral." "I promised to help you get stable," I said, "not to fund your entire adulthood." The line landed between us like a beam slamming into place. My heart pounded. I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to be the man who stopped paying. I wanted to be the man who saved the day. But I also wanted my daughter back. And you don't get both. Paul stood. He paced. He did that sales guy thing with his hands where he draws boxes in the air to pen you into his logic. "Do you understand what you're doing to your grandchildren?" he said. "Sophie lives for her dance classes. Liam's a starter on the baseball team. You're tearing apart a family to win some moral argument." I kept my voice low. "Your kids will be fine. They'll change leagues, maybe schools. They'll learn that love doesn't equal luxury, that a Range Rover doesn't mean you're a man. They'll learn resilience. That's a better gift than marble countertops." He laughed, high and weird. "You're a bitter old man." "And you're a scared young one," I said. Emily reached for Paul's sleeve. "Please," she said. "Stop. This isn't helping." He rounded on her. "He's humiliating me." She flinched. There it was, the thing I'd refused to see for too long. The face she wears when she's made herself small to make someone else big. Catherine would have dragged me into the kitchen by the belt and told me the truth. You taught her to be grateful by doing too much. Now she doesn't know how to be brave without permission. Paul stormed out. The door rattled in its frame. Emily stayed. She looked at the folders, then at me. "I thought we were managing," she said. I didn't know it was this much." "You were managing," I said. "Me." Word travels in Cedar Ridge like wildfire over cheatgrass. By Monday afternoon, I was the villain and the hero, depending on which aisle you were in at the grocery store. "He cut them off with no warning," someone hissed near the rotisserie chickens. "He's been carrying them for a decade," someone else murmured by the canned tomatoes. The bar on Main lit up that night with men clutching IPAs and opinions. I didn't go. I went to bed early and slept like a man who finally told the truth. Tuesday morning, a sherbet orange sticker went up on Emily's front door. Notice of default. 30 days. $7,440 plus fees. Mrs. Lopez took another picture and texted me a frowning emoji. Paul's Range Rover disappeared from the driveway on Wednesday and came back a day later with a boot-shaped shadow on his Pride that you could see from across the street. On Thursday, Emily stood behind the counter at Maple Street Coffee in a black apron, hair in a messy bun, smile fixed like stage makeup. "Paper or plastic?" she said to Mrs. Henderson, who pretended not to recognize her even though their sons had shared a classroom for 3 years. After her shift, Emily sat in her car and cried. "I know because I parked across the street and did the worst thing a father can do. I watched my kid hurt and didn't fix it. I kept a promise I hadn't said out loud. I took Liam to baseball practice. I signed Sophie up for rec league dance. I paid those invoices directly and emailed the receipts to the registrar and the coach. I built a wall where a funnel had been." Friday night, Paul knocked again. He looked wrecked, tie loosened, eyes like he hadn't slept since 1998. He stood on my porch and stared at his shoes, then at me. "I told people you abandoned us," he said. "At Murdoch's, at the gym. I made it sound like you were cruel." "I know," he swallowed. "Ray at the dealership reminded me you co-signed the first car when I had no credit. Gus told me he's seen you buy our kids' gear for years. People remember, Richard. Not everyone's on my side. It's embarrassing." "Embarrassment doesn't kill you," I said. "It saves you, if you let it." He looked up. The sales mask had slipped. Behind it was a boy whose dad left when he was 7, and who learned to sell because asking felt like dying. "I've never been a provider without you," he said. It wasn't a question. "No," I said, and let the word hang there until it stopped echoing. He nodded. He left. The next morning, Emily came with a spiral notebook and a pen and a shaking hand. "Teach me a budget," she said. We sat at my table for 2 hours and added numbers and subtracted fantasies. She wrote a big headline at the top of a page. "What we can actually afford." It looked like a funeral program. It looked like a birth certificate. By Monday, the foreclosure clock was a drumbeat in everyone's veins. The Range Rover was gone for good, replaced by a 10-year-old Honda with dents like honesty. The HOA newsletter arrived with an article about right-sizing your life that made me laugh so hard I had to lean on the kitchen counter to catch my breath. That afternoon, I drew up a plan. Not for a house, for a family. It hinged on one beam I had never asked them for before: accountability in public, not just regret in private. They arrived at 10:15 a.m. on a Monday that smelled like rain. The Honda coughed into my driveway. Sophie had braided hair and a backpack. Liam carried a baseball glove he didn't seem to realize he was holding like a shield. Paul wore a wrinkled button-down. Emily wore her coffee shop apron because she had a shift at noon. "Sit," I said. "We're going to do this like a construction meeting. Clear agenda, clear deliverables." Sophie perched on the edge of the couch. Liam sank into the corner and disappeared into a hoodie. Paul stayed standing until Emily tugged his hand. I laid out the plan. I am going to pay for Liam and Sophie's essentials, school, medical, activities, directly. No cards in between, no middlemen, no chance for anyone to confuse who's responsible for what. I'll set up 529s for their college funds. I'll drive to games. I'll show up for recitals. Sophie exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for 2 weeks. But, I said, I am not going to pay your mortgage, your car note, your insurance, your vacations, your dinners out, your hardwood floors. You will live on what you make. You will right-size your life to fit your reality, not the photo you want to post. Paul stared at the carpet as if the pattern held a loophole. There's more, I said. For 12 years, you let me be invisible because it kept your story clean. You told people you had it covered. You let them believe. You let me stand in the grocery line behind women whose kids go to school with your kids and listen to them talk about how proud they are of your hustle. You turned my love into your resume. We're going to fix that. How? Emily asked, voice small but steady. You're going to tell the truth, I said. A letter to the Cedar Ridge Chronicle. A post on your social accounts. Face-to-face conversations with the neighbors who heard Paul's version last week. Not with bitterness. Not with self-flagellation. Just the facts. For 12 years, my father helped us. We didn't thank him properly. We made choices that were too big for our income. We're changing that now. Paul's head snapped up. You want me to humiliate myself? I want you to be free, I said, and God help me, I meant it. Shame is a closet. Truth is a window. Open it. He laughed once. It wasn't a happy sound. He looked at Emily. She was already nodding. Tears had carved raw tracks down her face for 2 weeks, and now they dried a little. We'll do it, she said. I don't know if I can, Paul said. You can, I said, or you can lose the house at 3 this afternoon. Those are your 2 choices. No third path exists. I looked. Silence landed, soft and heavy. Liam shifted. Sophie leaned into her mother. Paul rubbed his face with both hands like he wanted to erase it. Finally, he nodded. Okay. I picked up the phone and called Front Range Bank. Emergency payment, I said. Account number ending in 4821. I read numbers. I gave them my routing. I asked for a confirmation email. A woman named Cheryl told me in a voice like a porch swing that they'd hold off the wolves until next month. When I hung up, I didn't hug anyone. It wasn't that kind of moment. We were pouring a footing. You don't celebrate a trench. At noon, Emily posted on Facebook. She hit publish with her eyes closed like she was jumping off a cliff. The post wasn't long. It was honest. She thanked me by name for 12 years of help. She said it wasn't healthy. She said they were making changes. She apologized for the impression they'd given that they'd done it alone. Then she went to work and tied an apron around her waist and made 3 dozen lattes with hearts drawn in the foam that were not ironic. Paul's letter to the Chronicle ran on Thursday. The editor, a woman who's lived here since mountain lions still strolled Main Street at night, ran a black and white photo of Paul and Emily on their wedding day. He wrote in his own voice. He didn't spin. He titled it, Paying Back What You Can't Repay. He admitted that his pride made him mean. He wrote that his father left when he was little, and he spent his life trying to outrun that emptiness with shiny things. He wrote that the emptiness only stayed quiet when he told the truth. People stopped me in the produce aisle and said, "You did right." A few said, "You could have kept it private." One guy at the gas station clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Wish I'd had the spine." I didn't need applause. You don't bolt a house to a hillside and then stand in the street with a parade float. You watch quietly and hope it holds in the wind. The following weeks, looked like humility looks. The Range Rover was gone for good. The Honda stayed. The golf membership froze. Emily worked mornings at the coffee shop and 2 evenings a week at a nursing home because she'd once dreamed of nursing school, and touching that world again made her stand taller. Paul sold 2 watches. He canceled an Aspen weekend he couldn't afford, and instead took Liam fishing at Union Reservoir with a $10 day pass and a cooler full of cheese sandwiches. They came back sunburned and laughing like I hadn't heard in years. We started a new ritual, the first Saturday of every month at my place at 2 o'clock. No money talk, no scorekeeping, just lunch and stories. Liam showed up in a jersey and gave me a rundown of his on-base percentage like a sportscaster. Sophie brought watercolor paintings she made at the library. Emily arrived with the smell of espresso in her hair, and the lines around her eyes softer. Paul came with a pie once that he obviously didn't bake, but he put it on the table like offering, and it counted. 3 months in, they weren't rich. They were okay. They were paying the mortgage from their own paychecks. The ledger didn't grow fatter. My checkbook got fatter for the first time in 10 years. I signed up for the photography workshop Catherine and I had circled in a brochure once, and then forgot when bills piled up. I drove to the Great Sand Dunes on a Tuesday with a friend from my hiking group and took 50 pictures of light on rippled sand that looked like the ocean held its breath. At church one Sunday, the pastor told a parable about the prodigal son that I've heard 1,000 times and always thought was about the boy. That day, I heard the father differently. He ran to meet the son when he turned back, yes, but he also let him go when he needed to leave. Love is not a choke collar. It's a gate you open, sometimes again and again. 6 months in, the Cedar Ridge Chronicle ran a follow-up. Living Within Your Means, One Family's Update. They quoted Emily about meal planning and used an unflattering photo of me in a baseball cap I wear when I don't want anyone to recognize me at Safeway. Paul told the reporter he sleeps better. He said the house feels bigger. He said the view looks like a gift again instead of a trophy. On a Friday night in June, Emily knocked on my door with Sophie in a soccer jersey and grass on her knees. "We have something," she said. Sophie handed me a card with a glitter heart, and the word thanks spelled wrong. Liam gave me one too, with handwriting too cool for hearts, where he wrote, "You're a real one, Grandpa." We ate pizza. We told stories. At the end of the night, Paul stood up and cleared his throat. "I don't have a speech," he said, which meant he had one. "I have a sentence, thank you. For the money, yeah, but more for the hard thing, for shutting the spigot, for not letting me use you to avoid becoming a man." I nodded. We didn't hug. The old men in the movies hug and cry, and you think that's how it goes. In real life, men like us nod. Sometimes that nod is a whole poem. When they left, I stood in the driveway and watched the Honda pull away, taillights glowing dull and honest. The air was thick with cut grass and the faint sound of a summer game drifting out of open windows. I looked up at the ridge. Their house sat there like a lesson carved into the hill. In the end, this wasn't about money at all. It was about respect, the kind a man earns, the kind a family owes. It was about sacrifice and what happens when it's taken for granted. It was about justice, not the courtroom kind, but the kind that lives in your own home when you finally say, enough. We all carry burdens for the ones we love. But real love doesn't mean carrying them forever. It means teaching them how to walk on their own. That's the hardest part of being a father, and the most important. So if you've ever given too much, stayed quiet too long, or felt invisible in your own family, remember this. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is close one, so someone else learns how to open it. I learned that truth on a quiet night in Cedar Ridge, watching a battered old Honda roll down my driveway with my grandchildren laughing in the back seat. It wasn't luxury. It wasn't pride. It was family, finally learning to stand on its own. If this story spoke to you, don't stop here. Stay with this channel. There are more stories about sacrifice, honor, betrayal, and redemption. Stories that may remind you of your own and help you carry them differently.